Welcome back to Wounded for War. This morning, I want to talk about a subject having to do with identity, as we talked last week about identity as well, but we talked about we're not the main role or the main character in this story we call life, right? We talked about how we're more of a supporting role to what's actually going on in this world. And today, I want to talk about a sense of identity that I'm real familiar with, and that's being broken, but also being fully loved. And usually the two don't feel like they go together, right? We often feel like in this Instagram-filled world that we have to put our best out there to be loved. You put the best feeds out there, best pictures of yourself, the best life that's going on, and you get more likes. So the better the image, the better the experience viewed by everyone else, right? But juxtapose that, you put bad content on your Instagram, or you have you don't put the best out there, then you don't experience fulfillment, right? You end up actually feeling broken. No one loves me. Nobody's watching me. Nobody cares about me. So oftentimes when we think of brokenness and love, we don't think the two go together, right? But what if the facts are that you could? You could be fully transparent and broken and yet fully loved. Well, I want to before we take a look at what I would say is the plan for feeling both fully broken and transparent about that and being fully loved. What I want to do is I want to first take a look at what Science Today says. Okay, Science Today. We're gonna use a specific individual and their study. I'm gonna read you some stuff that came out of a Forbes article, and it's written by Nicole Gravagna, I think her name is. Sorry for butchering it. But she's a PhD neuroscientist. She's the president of NeuroEQ. And she writes about a gentleman by the name of Abraham Maslow, who was a psychologist. He defined essentially what we call today as the hierarchy of human needs. He put together a list that basically in the 1940s that became one of the utmost referenced lists in regards to human needs. However, we've learned a lot since 1940, right? We've expanded our research, and in those years we've learned a lot. Well, Maslow's list includes many requirements that are not actually ingredients towards happiness. Instead, many of Maslow's needs are descriptions of how people are when they are in long-term state of contentedness. For example, self-esteem, a sense of security, a sense of belonging, and self-actualization are side effects of contentedness. They are not needs in their own right. That was how he looked at things. Now that we've come 75 years forward, and they've done more research, and we have sociology that researchers that are looking into things over the last 75 years. We have neuroscience studies that we've looked at, and obviously we have psychology that we've looked at and analyzed everybody's brains, right, to figure out how things really function. Well, we've come up with a new list, and there's only 6 items on there. And these 6 items are pretty basic. Now, going back to what these 6 items are, it's real simple. This is today's definition after 75 years of some of the top scientists in the world doing the research. This is what they say you need to live your best life now. Okay? I'm going to give them to you. Hold tight. Water. Food. Shelter. Sleep. Okay, stop there. 4. We've only gone 4, and it sounds stupid. Obvious. ridiculous. I wasted my time to read the article, is what it sounds like. But the next two I want you to pay attention to. The next two are ones that actually are things that we're definitely testing the waters in a lot of different realms on these two in particular, okay, in our society today. One is a connectedness with community that encourages. It has basically a physical, we need a connection that's physical and emotional, because it actually releases a certain hormone in us that helps us to develop our brains, especially when we're younger. There's been studies that show that in the early years of development, that physical and emotional touch are super important. There was a group of people over in the area, Ukraine, and apparently there was an orphanage where there was a bunch of kids and they were never picked up or held, and a bunch of them started dying, and people didn't understand what was going on. And so the government sent in some people, researchers, to take a look at what was going on, and they started to realize they just needed to be held, and they started gaining their health back. And also, by the way, a lot of research, especially complex PTSD, shows that if, in fact, the child is not loved or cared for in the early years, that there are detrimental slowing down processes in their mind and in their development. I just started seeing a therapist myself to understand some of these things and get to work through them. You have to understand them to even work through them, right? The other thing that is needed is challenge. Now, it put it as novelty, but after doing a little homework, it comes up with basically a new opportunity to change or to move forward. Basically something that helps you to feel like you have hope moving forward, right? Those two things are what are really important out of the six. The other four are obvious, but it's an interesting article, so I want to read some of the rest to you. It says, these 6 needs, when met, allow for a person to develop self-esteem, security, belonging, actualization, and the other expressions of contentedness that Maslow describes. It says, we now live in a world where coaching, therapy, and personal development is the norm. Psychology is expected to support all people in achieving their goals. This new modern list of needs assumes that if these 6 basic needs are met on a daily basis, that a person will have enough motivation, well-being, physical stamina to seek out physical exercise, emotional stimulation, and creative expression as needed throughout their lives. However, it says, unfortunately, when people go for long times without having all 6 of these needs met, it becomes difficult for them to begin to allow for these needs to be met. What do I mean by that? A person who doesn't get enough sleep will insist that they can do without. A person who has grown up without deep connection to others will insist that they prefer to be a loner. Those who have deeply rooted routines will resist change when it's offered to them. It's very interesting that what this says is we need to be connected and feel connected to others. It says that we need to feel that we have a sense of purpose that drives us. Those are 2 factors that aren't, I wouldn't say, the bare essentials like water, shelter, sleep, or food. Those are things that we have to really work at. They're more on the inner part of our being. They're not as obvious. And they can go left unchecked, if you will. And so when I look at that, it sounds like if I just check the boxes of 6 things, I'll be good. But the problem is that a lot of people are checking those boxes and they don't seem to be good. But let's say, because I am feeling better. I'll tell you, right now I changed my diet. I'm taking in more water. I am on a pretty much a whole food, for the most part, plant-based or organic meats. I'm running now, which is, if you know me, very abnormal for me. I'll do it. I'll go fast and I'll go forward in one case and scenario usually, and that's if I have a skateboard under me. Shelter, I'm doing all right. We got a house, right? And I've started actually, even with a Fitbit, trying to track my sleep. I got a new mattress just recently. I mean, I'm doing everything. I'm trying to check those boxes, right? But how about connection with others or a sense of purpose? Well, I'm doing my best, but I'm still not completely fulfilled if I was just dealing with those. And I would like to show you what the Bible has to say about those two other ones and how important they are. It basically can be best seen in one place. We're going to look at a bunch, but one that kind of summarizes all of it, and that's in Romans chapter 5, verse 6. It says this: "For while we were still helpless, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly." Okay, hold on. It's saying that the right time was when I was the most helpless, and that's when God decided to show me his love and do his thing. He died for the ungodly. I would say I fit that. I definitely, most of my time, most of my days, especially the closer you are to me, the more you see it, I would definitely qualify as ungodly. And yet he says that at the right time, that the right time for him to die on my behalf was when I was completely helpless. Well, how helpless do I need to be then? Because I'm doing pretty good at these things in life, and I think I'm doing all right. I'm progressing, and that should count for something, right? But how dead am I? Am I somewhat self-deceived? Am I thinking I'm doing good and not doing good? Well, the Bible would put it this way again. It would say that in Ephesians 2, verses 1 through 3, that helpless means dead, that you were dead in your trespasses and sins. Dead in my trespasses and sins. Those are church words, and I get it. They kind of stumble you up. They don't sit well. I don't know how they sit with you, but basically all we're talking about is trespasses would be offenses and sins would be missing the mark. It's an old word, archery term, sin is, and it just means to miss the mark. So what it's really saying is the reason I'm dead is because I have offended and I have missed the mark. I've offended the one who made me, God, and I'm missing the mark by not doing the things and living the life and living according to his plan. So you say, and I would too, and I have. What do you mean? How so? Well, it goes on in that Ephesians 2, and it says that we're walking according to three things. We're walking on a path, and this is how we're offending and missing the mark, okay? It says that we're walking in accordance with the course of this world. That the world is going in a projected way, and we're following. And it's not the right way. Now, what's funny is, if I leave God or Jesus out of it, and I just said the world's going the wrong way, you'll agree. I'll agree. We'll all agree. But when, for some reason, Jesus says it, we don't agree. Let's just all agree with him. He says, walking according to it is missing the mark. All right. The prince of the power of air. I'm also walking in that. That's number 2. So the first one, I'm walking according to the world. Second one, I'm walking according to the prince of the power of air. What does that mean? That's the Bible's way of just labeling. It's one of the names that it gives for Satan and his demons. So not only am I going the way of the world, but now I'm going the way of Satan. I could see that. I could see that the way the world is going is bent towards hell, is bent towards his desires, not my desires or their desires, but his desires. And somehow he's done a rope-a-dope on him, man. on all of us. There's times where he trips us up and it's like Peter Pipe or whatever that dude, that leads all the mice, right? He's doing a good job, right? And then the last one, the third one, it says is the flesh, which is basically my desires. Okay, so I'm following the world, I'm following Satan, and I'm following my own flesh. All three, the lust, the desires of my own heart is basically the last one. Those three are an enemy to my best life now. It offends God. They miss the mark of what he's designed me for. Catch that, what he's designed me for. See, one of the biggest problems we have in this whole plan we call life is that, as we said last week, we focus too much on ourselves as the main character in the movie, right? And yet we're not. And so, how do we rightly view ourselves? I would say that we need to rightly view God. And so, one of those elements is found best. One of his best attributes is found in the next section in Ephesians chapter 2, and it says, "But God." So while we're offending him, while we're in this missing the mark moment, and while we're following the ways of the world, while we're following Satan, and I'm following my own lustful desires, he says, "But God, being rich in mercy." I don't expect that. I did not expect that. I expected, "But you. You made a mess, but you better clean it up. But you better pull up your bootstraps. But you better do something about this before he comes back." That's kind of what religion often espouses. But that's not what the Bible espouses. You see, he says, "But God, being rich in mercy." So when I'm at my worst and I'm helpless and I'm dead, he says, but God, being rich in mercy. I need him to be rich in mercy. If this is true and I have offended him, when I've offended anyone, I need them to be rich in mercy. Look, I've been in a courtroom. If you've ever had a traffic violation, I've had a lot worse than that, but we'll just take it for traffic violations. Pretty common. If you have a traffic violation and you go into that courtroom, what are you looking for? You're looking for mercy. Don't give me what I deserve. Please don't give me what I deserve. I ran a red light. I deserve $500 ticket. Please don't give me the $500 ticket. Give me mercy. It goes on just after that portion and says, "Because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses." There it is again. Dead in our trespasses. Again, we're talking about in our state of being at our worst. He says in that moment, because of his great love with which he loved us. Notice it's not my strength, my ability, or my cunningness that gets me into right standing with him. It's his own love. That's the same way you get it too. It's not, but you did something. It's, but God loved you and gave you mercy. And while you were at your worst, while I was at my worst. Have you ever experienced mercy? There's another verse we got to look at before we leave this thought. It's Romans 5:10, and it says, it puts it this way: "For if while we were enemies," it ups the ante a bit. I'm not just dead. I'm not just a trespasser. I'm not just helpless. While I'm an enemy combatant. "For if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, much more, having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life." He doesn't just make it so that I have mercy or that you have mercy. He finds us in our worst state, and then he just says, "Hey, but I won't give you the punishment." He doesn't just do that. See, that last part is super important where it says, "We shall be saved by his life." It says, having been reconciled, much more, having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. What it's saying there is, having been reconciled, we're already made right with him now. Okay, so if while I was an enemy, he made the relationship right again, dude, how much more is he going to save us? Well, what does that mean? I thought, wouldn't that mean that we're saved? Well, what he's talking about there is how much more would the life that he lived, the perfect life, he was a perfect man here on earth. He never sinned. He never missed the mark. So he went to heaven that way. He went home perfect. Here's the funny thing, or the most amazing thing. He accounts that perfect life to me and you if we receive it as a gift. He goes on and actually states that. He says that we were so loved that we were made alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. This is not something that we can earn or gain another way. It's a gift to be received. You know, here's the crazy thing. I'll give you an illustration of this. It's kind of counterintuitive though, because what we do most of the time is we think that we have to manipulate people to get love, or I need to, buy love. But here's the thing, is that with my wife, we've been married 17 years. We've been together for 20. If I look back on the 17 years we've been married, in the seasons where we were doing our best, it wasn't because I was just receiving all this love from her and she's doing a good job, and because she's doing such a great job and I'm just receiving all this love, I feel so great in and of myself. But when she gets worn out and tired, she stops. All of a sudden I would just not be excited, not feel loved, and I would feel incomplete, and she would be the source of both my moments of heightened love and moments of the deepest depressions. But actually what's happened is, in our relationship, it's in seasons when I look back that I loved her very well, that she loved me back. That even maybe in a season where I saw she was really struggling and suffering, and her identity was not really rooted well in good things, and what she ended up doing was she was defaulting to some very problematic ways of life and living. In those moments, I loved her, and I'm not perfect. I don't do it right every time, but in those seasons where I reflect back, I look and I say, man, when I did love her well, when I did a really good job at loving her when she wasn't lovable, according to what she would say, she received that love and it breathed life into her, and she reciprocated with love. She didn't even feel like she had it at the moment, but by receiving this love that I was giving to her, it gave her the ability to love back in ways that brought me life. In that same way, I'm not saying that you should be pouring into Jesus and he'll pour back. I'm saying the opposite, that it's he loved you so well and gave you so much, and gave you so much mercy, and then gave you so much life after that. He's, as we recognize that, and he's displaying his love in that such grandiose way, what it does is it gives us the ability to love him back. And because he loves humanity and he gave his life for them, we'll start to love other people. Just like he loved us when we were unlovable, we'll start to reciprocate that even. Then we're going to start to love the unlovable people. I understand that it's hard to conceive of an idea that you can be fully transparent, broken, but loved. Because this world judges pretty harshly. And we're basing everything off of an Instagram style life. But here's the thing. Jesus is the only place that you're going to find that is going to say, you can be fully transparent with me. You can be fully broken and fully loved. If you want that, if you need that, I'm experiencing that. And it's freeing and it's beautiful and it's awesome. If you want that, though, all you have to do is talk to him and ask him for it. You know, you may have heard in the 80s and 90s a phrase was real common, the sinner's prayer, or you have to pray this prayer. Look, there's no such thing in the Bible. There's people that come to Jesus and recognize who he is and follow him. That's it. You know, for the first 3 years, the disciples, they weren't really, I would say, devout Christians. They were seekers. These dudes were walking alongside Jesus, and they were always questioning, hey, are you really the guy we were looking for? Or should we look for another? Right? Statements like that. They weren't all in. Peter bailed 3 times. Verbally, and then literally bounced. Went back to work. These guys weren't solid Christians. These guys were people looking for hope. They thought they found it in him, and they trusted him, and they kept trusting. And then when they would trust a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and they became people that he used radically to change the world. If you want to be that, if you want to live your best life now, then be broken. But be transparent with him. And ask him to reveal to you his love for you. It's as simple as just going into a quiet place and just saying, Jesus, if you're real, I'm jacked up and I admit that and I know it, but I pray that you would show me how much you love me. Next week, we're going to be tuning in for another Wounded for War episode. We're probably going to cover some more identity, mostly because I need it too, man. We all need to be reminded of who we really are and what really counts in this life. Until next time, see you guys. Love you. Bye.